Some individuals are born with fortunate circumstances, while others find themselves in less favorable positions. Henry unmistakably fell into the latter category. He was facing unemployment and the looming prospect of homelessness, a stark contrast to the expectations he had for the beginning of his adult life. His sister's departure to Spain to be with her boyfriend meant he had to seek a new place to live, but before that, securing a job was his immediate concern. Henry's journey took a turn when he realized that the academic path was not suited to him. He had left school at 16 with a strong grade C in art. He intended to explore various job opportunities before deciding on a lucrative path to eventually purchase his own place. Unfortunately, the job offers he had envisioned were far from forthcoming. Over the last few months, he diligently applied for any available positions, only to find himself consistently deemed too young, lacking experience, or simply not the right fit. As desperation set in, he discovered an advertisement for a clerk position at the body shop during one of his routine visits to the job center. Despite his lack of experience, inability to type, and a lukewarm interest in cars, Henry took a chance and applied for the job. To his astonishment, the manager of the body shop extended him a job offer. Henry's streak of good fortune defied his expectations, and he accepted the offer without hesitation. Seated behind the reception desk, Henry mulled over the potential for this opportunity to evolve into something rewarding. He envisioned a path into the mechanics field, learning the trade, advancing to a role in the garage, and perhaps even establishing his own business one day. All he needed was to cultivate a genuine enthusiasm for automobiles, a task he believed wouldn't be too challenging. Yet, as weeks passed without encountering a single engine, his lofty aspirations began to feel more distant. Thus far, Henry's role had revolved around managing orders, answering phone calls, and completing forms from his post at reception. He was not yet permitted access to the warehouse, which lay behind a plain white door beside the desk, labeled "Authorized Personnel Only." Through that door, muffled conversations could be heard, distinct from the typical rough chatter associated with garages. The specialized nature of the operation necessitated a high level of professionalism. An intriguing scent wafted through the door when co-workers leaned in to collect order sheets. Henry deduced it was likely motor oil or grease, subjects he hoped to familiarize himself with over time. Despite his curiosity, Henry remained stationed at reception, embodying the public face of the body shop, as explained by the manager. Though he maintained a friendly and exceedingly polite demeanor, Henry had reservations about whether he was the right face for the company's promotion. Nevertheless, his persistent good luck continued. A chance conversation with a customer resulted in a room rental opportunity provided by Mrs. Mildred, a delightful elderly lady who frequented the shop. Mrs. Mildred, despite her outward appearance, possessed a mischievous sparkle in her eyes that only elderly women seemed capable of. Gratitude radiated from her as Henry assisted her with parcels, often sharing compliments about his arm's firmness and strength. She would jestingly remark that she knew where to turn if she required such assistance. Mrs. Mildred's warm interactions contrasted sharply with those of less pleasant customers, most notably Mr. McRood. Mr. McRood became a daily caller, relentlessly inquiring about the whereabouts of his order. On Henry's first day, the gruff old man had demanded its status in a raspy, gravelly voice. Henry's response was tentative, unsure how to handle the situation. The barrage of calls continued, each more aggressive and personally insulting than the last. Supposedly, Mr. McRood's order was a unique and essential one from Cuba, delayed by customs complications. Despite Henry's explanations, Mr. McRood persisted in holding him accountable for the delay, even attributing the trade restrictions to Henry's actions. Finally, the long-awaited order arrived, a sizable brown package around a meter in length. Though not overly heavy, it was awkward to carry. Henry begrudgingly undertook the task of delivering it to Mr. McRood's residence as a gesture of customer service, despite his inner reluctance. The bungalow's dilapidated appearance matched the sour attitude Mr. McRood exhibited over the phone. Upon reaching the doorstep, Henry faced a grisly surprise. Mr. McRood standing before him was unmistakably deceased. Shock overtook Henry as he processed the impossible sight of the rotting corpse, the stench of decay reminiscent of the warehouse. Despite the uncanny encounter, Henry's commitment to his role pushed him to fulfill the delivery. The package contained a severed human leg, and Mr. McRood's bizarre request was satisfied. His cryptic comment about Mrs. Mildred's lodger left Henry feeling increasingly unnerved. Fleeing the haunting scene, Henry questioned how unlucky one person could truly be. Maple Street was alive with the vibrancy of a mid-July afternoon. The day held the promise of an ideal Saturday, with the thermometer hovering at a comfortably warm 80 degrees. The air was infused with the mouth-watering aroma of barbecues wafting from various corners of the neighborhood. A group of boys engaged in a spirited game of pickup baseball at the nearby recreational dugout, their laughter echoing in the summer breeze. Meanwhile, girls indulged in hopscotch, casting coy glances at boys who pedaled past on bicycles, prompting giggles and blushes. Along the chalk-drawn sidewalks, neighbors exchanged waves and greetings as they strolled along, while the trees provided a harmonious backdrop with the melodious songs of perched birds. It was the epitome of a perfect summer day. Amid this picturesque scene, a fair-haired boy named Bobby pedaled around the neighborhood on his brand-new, vibrant red Schwinn bicycle. The bike had been a gift for his 11th birthday, less than a month prior. Attached to the handlebars was a small transistor radio blaring D.D. Sharp's Mashed Potato Time at an enthusiastic volume. Mr. Hargis, known as the local neighborhood grouch, stood in his yard, tending to his lawn and puffing on a fresh cigar. Intrigued by Mr. Hargis's presence, Bobby halted his cycling and observed from a cautious distance. Sensing the boy's gaze, Mr. Hargis looked up and made eye contact with Bobby. Normally aloof and dismissive, today Mr. Hargis seemed unusually amiable, likely influenced by the warm sun's embrace. He offered a polite wave, and Bobby, taken aback by this unexpected friendliness, tentatively waved back. Leaving the Hargis residence behind, Bobby continued pedaling toward the nearby dugout. Along the way, he encountered neighbors walking their dogs, sharing friendly smiles as they passed. Dogs playfully interacted, creating an atmosphere of communal joy. Bobby was captivated by this unprecedented display of neighborly happiness, clearly affected by the weather's positive influence. After covering 3 blocks, Bobby reached his destination, the bustling baseball field. 2 teams were locked in an energetic match, with his best friend Jimmy at the plate. Onlookers filled the bleachers, enthusiastically cheering for their friends. A cluster of girls stationed near the dugout admired their favorite players. As Bobby rode by, he heard a whistle and a chorus of giggles. He glanced back, his shyness giving way to a bashful grin, though he couldn't quite identify the source of the whistle. Parking his bicycle against the fence, Bobby joined the dugout just as the game concluded. Jimmy approached, tucking his bat behind his head and playfully shoving Bobby's shoulder. "Hey, you shitheels," Jimmy greeted him, using a word he'd picked up from his older brother Eddie and had come to enjoy. "Nothing much," Bobby replied. "Just cruising around on the new bike." "I see." Jimmy briefly looked past Bobby's shoulder, then back at him. "One of those girls is totally checking you out, man." Bobby turned to observe the group of girls. Amidst the smiling faces, he easily spotted the one Jimmy referred to. She had long, wavy red hair framing bright green eyes that beamed at Bobby, accompanied by a warm, dimpled smile. Bobby stole glances, alternating between meeting her gaze and looking down at the ground, sensing her favorable interest. As their peers dispersed into smaller groups, Bobby worked up the courage to approach the girl. But suddenly a distant, high-pitched sound reached their ears. It grew louder, a recognizable jingle drawing closer. The ice cream truck. "Ice cream!" someone shouted, prompting a rush of children eager to flag down the source of the tune. The truck parked at the end of the street, and the crowd assembled, eagerly awaiting their icy treats. Bobby, however, realized he had no money with him. He resignedly turned to retrieve his bicycle, sitting idly as he watched his friends purchase their treats. Bobby recognized the driver as the same man he'd seen during previous visits, an older gentleman with white hair and a kindly smile. Within minutes, the other kids, including Jimmy and the girl, left as a group to enjoy their ice cream. Bobby lingered behind, and he noticed the truck remained, despite no other customers in sight. After a moment, the group faded from view, and Bobby was about to pedal away when a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, you boy, on the bike," the ice cream man called out. Reluctantly, Bobby dismounted and walked toward the truck. He felt an obligation to respect authority figures, even those as seemingly innocuous as the ice cream man. "You need to come with me immediately. Your parents are, injured," the ice cream man said, his attention divided between Bobby and the direction the other kids had gone. "What?" Bobby responded, his shock palpable. The man's words reached him as if through a distant tunnel, a numbing sensation washing over him. "Your parents want me to find you and take you to them. They're at the hospital. Your name's Bobby, right?" "Yes," Bobby answered automatically. "Great, I know your parents. They were in a car accident. They'll likely be fine, but they want me to get you to the hospital right away." The man's gaze wandered down the street, following the path the other children had taken. While Bobby had been warned about the dangers of trusting strangers, he had encountered this man before, even engaged in friendly conversations while buying ice cream. Perhaps this familiarity rendered him more than a mere stranger, and maybe the man had some connection to his parents. The urgency to ensure his parents' safety outweighed any reservations. "Okay, sir, but my bike." "Your bike will fit in the truck just fine, son." With little choice but to comply, Bobby assisted the man in loading his bike into the back of the truck, then climbed in after it. The ice cream man locked the doors behind them. "You can sit up front with me, Billy." "It's Bobby, sir," Bobby corrected him softly. "Oh, Bobby. Yes, of course, my apologies." The ice cream man offered a friendly smile, reciprocated with a half-hearted one from Bobby as he settled in next to him. As they drove, Bobby gazed out the window, consumed by thoughts of his parents and their well-being. 4 days later, Bobby's lifeless body was discovered in a remote field outside of town, bearing signs of assault and strangulation. The haunting image of his vacant stare reminded investigators of the moon overhead, a cold, distant presence that bore witness to unspeakable horror. Meanwhile, on Maple Street, the idyllic scene persisted. The air remained infused with the irresistible scent of barbecues, children continued their games, neighbors exchanged greetings, and the trees swayed to the harmonious songs of perched birds. The perfect summer day maintained its facade, masking the chilling tragedy that had unfolded beneath its seemingly serene surface.